What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking the latest episode of WWE Untold called Sting's Last Stand that premiered on the network yesterday, I believe before SmackDown. I think it went up around 6, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. But yeah, this was great. I mean, these Untold specials are always awesome. The last two, I think, were on Kane's debut from 22 years ago, 97, 22 years ago. And then the one before that, I think, was on Team Hell No. So a lot of focus on Kane. They did 2 episodes on Kane, and now 2 episodes on Sting. So if you can recall, I think earlier this year, around WrestleMania time, they did one of these Untold shows on Sting's Survivor Series debut, which they covered again here, which was weird, because they've already done one of these on Sting's debut, again, just earlier this year. This was a lot longer. This was a lot more in-depth. This was around 40 minutes in length. One of the lengthier ones they've done up to this point. And this one not only covered the debut, but also, as you could probably tell from the title, Sting's Last Stand, his final match as well against Seth Rollins at Night of Champions 4 years ago. It is worth noting that Sting's debut at Survivor Series was actually 5 years ago today, November 23rd, 2014. So the timing of this episode could not be any better, nor could the timing of my review from 5 years ago today did the debut happen. But one of my favorite memories as a WWE fan, because, I started watching WWE in 08. Of course, I knew who Sting was, knew of his WCW stuff, watched TNA. That's where I kind of got my taste of Sting as a wrestling fan, watching live. Then he left TNA in early 2014, and there was always a question, all throughout 2014, would he go to WWE? It seemed more like it would be more a matter of when than if he would show up in WWE after dodging WWE for so long. I still say, of course, right after WCW went under would have been a good time for him to come in. But then again, everyone came in. Goldberg, the NWO, Ric Flair. Would he have been lost in the shuffle had Sting debuted in 01, later on in 01, like not during the invasion and shit, but like later on in 01, 2002? I think there was a rumor that he almost came in 2005 before he signed with TNA. I might be wrong on that, but I feel like there was a rumor that I had read a while ago that he almost came in 05, but that's probably inaccurate. I might be getting my years mixed up here. I know he was almost going to be coming in 2002 for WrestleMania 18. I think to face Kurt Angle, but again, I might be wrong on that. Even though we did end up getting that match in TNA years later, like around 05, 06 or so. But anyway, Sting, I still say the closest he probably came to coming in, and like probably when he likely should have come in, and granted, this was when both guys were older, but not as old as they are now. Sting should have signed with WWE in 2011 when they were doing those 2/21/11 vignettes, which ended up being for Taker's return, which I believe wholeheartedly were always meant to be for Taker. I don't think they were ever doing those with the intent of bringing Sting in. I think Sting has since confirmed that they talked with him about him coming in to do the match. But honestly, I think it would have been a case of where the vignettes weren't for him, even though people, they thought they were. I think they got in contact with Sting after they already started airing the vignettes. So I don't think they knew as early as then that Sting may or may not be coming in. I think it was a case of, could he be coming in after the vignettes were done airing? So, remember after Taker returned that night on Raw, the 2/21/11 episode, which is actually, to my memory, a very good episode of Raw, because they kicked off the build to WrestleMania 27 that night with Miz and Cena, and then Taker and Sting. So, not Taker and Sting, I'm sorry, Taker and Triple H. So Taker comes out. Before he could say anything, Triple H's music hits. And we hadn't seen Triple H on WWE TV since, April of 2010, which at that point was a long time for Triple H. He was out hurt, and then he took a backstage role, so he was gone for a while. But I think, honestly, had Sting signed, they would have done that exact same angle, except with Sting and not Triple H. Now, honestly, with Triple H, what would they have done with him instead? Probably put him up against Sheamus, because Sheamus was the one who took him out a year earlier. Triple H beat him at WrestleMania. They probably would have done the match over again. Triple H probably would have won again, but it would have made sense because Sheamus took him out. Instead, Triple H came back, and the next week on Raw, I think he laid out Sheamus with like a pedigree or something. So that was their way of wrapping up their feud, which was kind of weak, and it buried Sheamus, but whatever. So that's what they did. And honestly, again, I know this is way off topic with the fucking special here, which I'll get to in a second. But I still say to this day, over 8 years later, that would have been perfect. Sting comes in, doesn't say a word. Crowd, even at that point, would have known who he was, would have gone crazy, would have been an amazing moment. The same way, honestly, that Triple H Taker moment was that year. That Taker Triple H moment is still talked about. I still see people tweeting about it 8 years later. That helped set the stage for their awesome WrestleMania 27 match. That was a great moment then. It's a great moment now. It's one of those, maybe not like the greatest moment in Raw history type of moments, but it was still pretty fucking great. Imagine how much better it would have been with Sting instead of Triple H. Like, it would have been amazing. But we got Triple H. Sting said no, went back to TNA, like almost right afterward, like in March of 2011. Won the World Championship a few more times, and then ended up coming in late 2014. So it ended up, working out for the better, and his debut I still love. No one knew. Like, you can say all that you want about Sting coming in. I think there might have been a rumor that weekend that Sting would be debuting, but then again, there had been rumors all 2014 long that Sting would debut, like at WrestleMania, that he would debut then after Mania, he would debut at SummerSlam, he would debut on this show, because he was in the video game that year too as like a DLC character, as like the cover, not the cover star, but like something along those lines with 2K15. So I'm like, everyone kind of figured, okay, he's going to be coming in sooner rather than later. He was doing like Comic-Con appearances with WWE, and then when he showed up at Survivor Series, it was one of the coolest moments I've ever seen as a fan. It was so fucking cool. But anyway, we'll go back to the beginning of this thing. I know we're like, let's say, almost 6-7 minutes in here, and I have yet to get to the special. But I did want to share that story about Sting and when he should have signed. But anyway, we kick off the special with Sting talking about how his face paint has helped him hide pain during different parts of his career. He wasn't always the very positive, religious person that he is today. He was kind of going through some troubling times at many points throughout his career, including early on in WCW, and his, the face paint, not only when he was Crow Sting, but also when he was Surfer Sting back in the day. Kind of helped him cope with the pain and hide that pain that he was feeling in his personal life at that point. Seth Rollins remembers watching Sting around when he was like 6. Not when Sting was 6, obviously, when Rollins was 6. To be, you guys probably understood that, but it is worth, clarifying just in case. Rollins remembers watching him during his early days when he was Surfer Sting. Then he felt like he could relate to Crow Sting in like 97, 98, because he was going through his teenage years at that point. So all the angst, the inner angst that he was feeling at that point, being rebellious, being the outcast, he felt he could relate to Sting in that way. And he also went as Sting for Halloween, probably as a teenager, around when he was like 13, 14, and that's a memory he still holds very fondly in his mind all these years later. He said that Survivor Series 2014 was probably the first time he had met Sting, which would make sense. When else would he have met him? Sting had been with the company, again, like at Comic-Cons and shit like that, but I don't think Rollins was that big of a star at that point where he was doing that type of shit back then. So he wouldn't have met him then, and he was never at Raw or anything like that, so it made sense that would have marked the first time that he would have met him. But we see footage of Sting walking backstage to the ring, which they do a lot now. Like, they're so over the top with the network shit now, the network shit now and the DVDs they put out, where they always get the personal moments before they go out there. They get that shit on camera. Like with the Hardy Boys. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the footage of the Hardy Boys walking through backstage before they came out of WrestleMania 33, which will never not give me goosebumps. But I don't think I've ever seen the footage of Sting walking backstage at Survivor Series until now. I probably have. Maybe it was even on the fucking last Untold. Who knows? But we saw it here, which was really cool. And then John Cone, who I think was one of the referees for that match, recalled Sting's debut, and the crowd going crazy, which it kind of comes across as muted on TV when you watch it back on the network. But I remember watching videos from people in the arena that night that were freaking the fuck out over Sting being there. And even kids realized it was him because they had watched him in TNA or knew of him through WCW stuff and whatever, through their parents or siblings or whatever. So people knew who Sting was, and it was a pretty big fucking deal. Rollins said that nobody knew. Like, no one in the audience knew. No one in the company knew except for the people in the ring, which was pretty cool. And he called the energy in the arena that night incredible. So they talk about the WrestleMania match. They don't talk about the build of the WrestleMania match facing Triple H. They talked more about that in the last Untold with Sting, when they covered his debut and then the WrestleMania match with Triple H. They kind of talk about it briefly here. John Cone talks about how amazing of a match it was, which it really wasn't. But it was a cool spectacle with DX involved and NWO and shit like that. They said in that Untold that it was supposed to be Rock and Triple H, maybe the subsequent Mania, which is why they put Triple H over Sting, which they didn't talk about that here, but it was still so fucking dumb. It made no sense. It was dumb to put Triple H over Sting. Their whole narrative was that WWE reigned supreme over WCW in the end, and that's why Triple H won. It's fucking dumb. I don't care what anyone says. It was a dumb fucking call. Regardless, Sting talks about how he remembers seeing The Rock when he walked to the back of the arena after his match. The Rock congratulated him on how great of a match he had. Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is really cool, who was there as... I think he got inducted into the Hall of Fame that year, and Sting was like blown away that even he would compliment him on his match, which was cool. And Vince was apparently really happy with the match after WrestleMania 31. And we see footage of Sting, who said, you know what, I've had moments before where I didn't really think it was it, and I had more left in me, but I'm really starting to feel now that was it. That was a proper end. That was a good way to end my career. And of course, he came back, if only a few months later, typically, as any wrestler can relate to. They never actually did come out on TV and say that he was retired. So it was really more a behind-the-scenes thing where he said, yeah, I'm done, and then came back only a few months later. I'm sure he was offered a lot of money, so that would make sense. But later on in the night, at WrestleMania 31, of course, Rollins won the WWE World Heavyweight Championship by cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase on Roman Reigns in the triple threat with him, Roman, and Brock Lesnar. An amazing moment. That Mania was one of my favorites of all time, and I was at Mania 33, Mania 35. I'm not sure if those are they probably are over WrestleMania 31 just because I was there for both of those Manias. But WrestleMania 31, probably the best Mania, my favorite Mania, I wasn't in attendance for. I fucking love that show. A near perfect show from start to finish. But Rollins doesn't take that moment of him becoming champion lightly. And said that he became the guy with that win and says that world championship means a lot to a lot of different people. So he does not take winning that championship lightly at all. Sting always thought he always turned down WWE. He never came to WWE previously, he reveals here, because he thought that Vince wanted to undermine what he accomplished in WCW and just undermine WCW on the whole, with Sting as like the, face of that company. He thought that Vince wanted to undermine WCW more than Vince wanted Sting as a talent himself. And Rollins thinks that Vince wanted to show Sting by bringing him in, that there was no bad blood there and that they could work together and make Sting a star. The Sting, the star that he always had been, So after WrestleMania 31, months later, around the summertime, which I think there were rumors around July that Sting was coming back, so that's probably when the news first started bubbling to the surface, even though it didn't come to fruition until after SummerSlam. I thought he would face off with Rollins at SummerSlam. Obviously he didn't, but they saved it for the pay-per-view after SummerSlam as an attraction for Night of Champions. So WWE approached Sting first about wrestling Rollins for the WWE title at the Night of Champions pay-per-view. He accepted it. Rollins talks about how he got a call. He remembers getting a call from WWE, a person at WWE, who told him, listen, we want to do an attraction at Night of Champions with you as a dual champion. You'll be WWE champion. You'll be United States champion. We want you to defend both titles in the same night, the U.S. title against John Cena, and then the WWE title against Sting. And Rollins remembers being completely floored. Now, this phone call must have taken place, if it is indeed true, which I'm sure it is, it must have taken place before SummerSlam, unless he was on the road, because he won the U.S. Championship at SummerSlam. He was already WWE champion, so that's not that far-fetched. But he remembers the phone call going where he was told about the U.S. Championship defense and shit like that, and he was a dual champion, which was kind of rare in WWE at that point. And to have two title defenses in the same night. Before Becky did it recently, it was kind of rare for people to do that. So, with Rollins, that phone call must have taken place before SummerSlam, because he talked about being at his house. And Sting came back the night after SummerSlam, the night after he won the U.S. Championship. So they must have told him in advance, listen, we're going to give you the U.S. title, and this is what we're going to do. Probably the week before SummerSlam. Not that it really matters, but I just thought it was interesting that they probably knew the outcome of that match at least days before the pay-per-view, which is kind of rare because usually they make their mind up on that type of stuff the day of the show. But again, he might just be bullshitting. Who knows? Anyway, so Cone has no idea. John Cone, one of the referees, has no idea still to this day how WWE managed to get Sting in the ring that night. So what they did was Rollins, before SummerSlam, said, listen, if I become United States champion, I want my own statue. That's what he told the authorities, Triple H and Stephanie. Of course, he won. And I always thought Rollins would lose because why the fuck would he get his own trophy? Of course, he did. And I remember them showing the trophy earlier on. Not the trophy, I'm sorry. I keep saying trophy. Statue. He was going to get his own statue. So I remember them showing the statue earlier on in the show. And I figured, and like Cena got like arrested or something. He got like taken out of the show. So I'm like, okay, so it won't be Cena coming out, and it won't be, I don't know, something's going to happen. They have to do something, because they're covering the statue in the ring, so there's got to be someone in that case. And they like kind of put it through the crowd, and they made people think that it was an actual statue in there. John Cone has no idea how they ended up doing this, but they managed to get it done. Sting talked about how, as we all figured at the time, he was sweating his ass off in there. It was like a fucking 110 degrees. He has the paint on, which is meant to not rub against the canvas, but it's not meant for like sweat and shit like that. So when he sweats, it comes off. And he's inside this hot box, and not just a cloth, but like a hot box, like a statue's supposed to be in there. So he's sweating his face paint off, sweating his balls off. The cloth comes off, Sting's in there. The crowd goes nuts. Rollins has this surprise look on his face. It was so fucking cool. It was a really, really, really good moment. So the crowd ate up the return. John Cone says that, Rollins at Night of Champions, he ended up making Cena physically hang with him in that match. And I mean, Cena, to his credit, was already a very good performer. He had already had many amazing matches. So the fact that Cena went out there and had another great match with Rollins was really far from a surprise. So the fact that Cone said that was kind of surprising. He's like, oh, Rollins really elevated Cena. No, I mean, Rollins is great, but Cena's always been Big Match John for a reason. I mean, obviously, specifically in 2015, but even prior to that point, the matches with Punk and so many others, Bryan, Shawn Michaels, the list goes on and on and on, Edge. I mean, it's not like Cena never had a great match prior to this point. So the fact that Cone kind of made it sound like Rollins carried Cena was kind of silly. But anyway, Rollins talked about how the back-to-back matches really helped his nerves. Because it's not like he had one match and then he was going to like, how am I going to top that with the second match? Like, he had no time to worry. He had no time to go through that process. And it also helped that he was already in the ring, because that's his safe place. So he really had no time to get worried about it and think about the fact that he was facing fucking Sting in the main event of this pay-per-view. So the match goes well. I honestly remember it being a pretty good match. Sting hits a powerbomb in the turnbuckle to Sting. Rollins hits it, to Sting in the turnbuckle, like he would anyone else, because he had been doing that move forever, and he did it to Balor about a year later, got him hurt on it, and he still does the move as he should. I mean, it's just freak accident shit. Like when AJ injured people with the Styles Clash. That was more a matter of they didn't know how to take it, and he hasn't hurt anyone with it since, so I'm glad they don't ban moves to that type of shit. I mean, it has hurt some people, but not everyone. Anyway, so he hits Sting with it in the turnbuckle, and Sting could like feel the electricity in his fingers, which just kind of makes me like cringe, because that type of stuff it's cringeworthy. Like, you never want to feel that way, where you kind of like, not stub your toe, but like we all get that feeling in our fingers, like where it's that electricity, when like you either shock yourself or whatever, the pain, I don't know. And that feeling just wasn't going away for him. That feeling would not go away from his fingers for whatever reason. So it wouldn't go away. The match continued. Sting told Cone, the referee that night, he said initially, I'm still feeling this weird feeling in my fingers, but whatever, I'm okay, let's continue. So they continued the match. Everything seemed fine, according to Rollins. And then Sting gets hit with a second turnbuckle powerbomb. Now, Sting should have said after the first one, listen, don't do that move again. I'm fucked up, I'm hurt. And maybe not that I'm, I can still think straight and speak and whatever, and I can stand up, but let's probably not do another one. So Rollins does that again, and it's not his fault. They probably either should have stopped the match, or just given him a moment to rest up or something, or at least not done the move again, which was insanely stupid, and everyone's to blame for that one. I mean, freak accidents happen, but Sting should have known, listen, I got hurt the first time taking it, I probably shouldn't do it again. They do the move again. At that point, Sting was fucked up. He collapsed after Rollins threw him against the ropes. Sting came back at him and just collapsed. It wasn't good. Sting was worried that something really bad had happened, and all the people in the back were like telling Cone through the microphone in his ear, is he okay? Is he okay? Is he okay? Can he get up? Can he continue? Blah, blah, blah. Cone tells the officials in the back, listen, he's not okay. He isn't okay right now. We need help. And Rollins, I mean, you can tell he feels really bad about this. It's not like he injured people on purpose or that he's reckless. He said he felt really, really helpless. There was nothing he can do. And this was a guy that he looked up to. This was a guy that he idolized. So for him to be the reason that he can't wrestle anymore really probably still bothers him to this day. But it definitely, especially in that moment, And it was hard for him to go in and out of character because he was trying to look up, trying to fucking make sure Sting was okay. But he was also this asshole heel at the time where he didn't want to make it look like he was a sympathetic figure. So he was trying to find that fine line of staying in character, but also checking up on Sting, making sure he was okay. It was a really scary moment. So eventually, Sting was good enough to go again. Rollins says that all wrestlers have this thing where, they can relate to wanting to finish a match despite being injured. They just want to get to that finish line. Every wrestler can relate to that. And Rollins said that Sting finishing that match was one of the most selfless things that he's ever seen. I mean, Rollins' comments were really cool, and then we hear from fucking Michael P.S. Hayes. This guy comes across as the biggest piece of shit in the world. I've said this for years now. With the Adam Rose comments on that ESPN special years ago. He's like, again, maybe I'm misinterpreting what Hayes was saying here, but in so many words, he was like, well, you just get up and do your fucking job. Like, obviously, that's what Sting was going to do, because that's his job. Like, shut the fuck up, you idiot. Like, obviously, you're not on Sting's level, so shut the fuck up. But, like, the guy was he could have died. He could have died. And not that he was calling Sting a pussy or anything like that, but he was basically saying, like, of course he got up. Like, why wouldn't he? That's what all wrestlers do. Like, shut the fuck up. If his neck just broke, clearly he's not going to get up and continue the match. Let's commend Sting for getting up at all, because most people probably wouldn't. He probably should not have continued the match after the first powerbomb, let alone the second one. So shut the fuck up with those dumb type of comments. I thought that was so stupid. I'm shocked they actually included that, because he came across, and again, maybe I'm just being a snowflake or something, but I thought he came across like an asshole and saying shit like that. But again, maybe that's just me, my bias towards Michael Hayes, always coming across like a piece of shit in every fucking interview they've ever had with a guy on these type of specials. But whatever. Taking up 50 minutes of the Hall of Fame the same year that Sting was inducted, who talked for like 10 minutes. Fuck you, dude. Anyway, Sting thought in that moment that he didn't want that to be his last match, but he was proud that he finished. And then he wanted just a moment to breathe afterwards, Sting that is. But Triple H went up to him and was like, hey, listen, dude, you got to go get checked out. You got to go to the ambulance. You got to get in the ambulance. You got to go to the hospital. You got to get checked out. As the ambulance was about to drive away, or the medical facility, as WWE would call it, Rollins pops his head in and is like apologizing profusely. He's like panicking. He's like, I'm so sorry. Did I do this? I didn't mean it, blah, blah, blah. And obviously it's all genuine. And he's like, randomly, he told him that he dressed up as him for Halloween as a kid, which is so random. And he's like, I guess Rollins in this state of panic had to get it out that he had dressed up as Sting one year for Halloween. Now, why in that moment when this guy almost died in the ring, I don't know why, but again, it's one of those weird situations where you don't really know how you're going to react, and you wanted to get it out in that moment because you always wanted to tell him and he never did. So I thought that was kind of funny, and Sting thought it was funny too, and he obviously has no hard feelings towards Rollins for it. So Sting went to the doctor, and the doctors told him, listen, dude, you were close to having a catastrophe. Like, you almost either couldn't, you probably would be paralyzed, or you'd be dead. That's how close you came to having something really, really bad happen to you. So Sting was, in retrospect, although he has not wrestled a match since, he got really lucky. He talked about having spinal stenosis. Now, he had, I think alluded to already having it prior to that match. But he also made it sound like that match was the reason why he had it. Now, the interviewer in this sit-down special, like we hear from the producer who was like, oh, was it Rollins? Did Rollins cause this? Was the match? Blah, blah, blah. And Sting shuts that shit down so quickly. He's like, listen, Rollins is not negligent. He shouldn't stop using the move. It's wrestling, guys. It's wrestling. That's what it is. That's what he had. That's what he said. And he was like, I don't blame him at all. It's not his fault. I think the spinal stenosis is exactly what caused Edge to retire. So he might have had, because he had said that he had neck issues previously, but that stuff went away. So, again, I'm not exactly sure. I don't know what he was talking about that. But bottom line, he doesn't blame Rollins at all, so other people shouldn't either. If Sting's not going to blame him, no one else should either. Rollins calls Sting very kind, very rare, the rare type of person that'll take time out of his day to, spend time with people and put other people over, give them a rub, blah, 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 that he was a really nice person. You'll never hear many bad things said about Sting, okay? And he said that Sting is one of those people that he looks up to and really wants to be like when, in that same spot when he, becomes a legend or wants to be an icon, whatever. He wants to be the same type of performer that Sting was for so many years, as a person that people look up to, can go to for advice, and can always expect to be nice and kind whenever. Probably not at the rate that Rollins is going at with this reign that he's had as Universal Champion and all the backlash he's had in 2019, but the guy can dream. And I'm a Seth fan, but whatever. So Sting even talked about how he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2016, WrestleMania 32 weekend, I think in Dallas. He actually wavered back and forth up until the very moment that he said it about retiring during his Hall of Fame speech. He was like, do I really want to make it official that I want to retire? And he ended up saying, listen, I'm happy to say I'm retired under the WWE banner. I won't be wrestling anymore. But he does close out this special, which I thought was very interesting. Now, this is nothing new. This is not groundbreaking. But it was interesting to hear from Sting on a WWE special, on a WWE-produced special. Not that it means anything. It's not like they're planting the seeds. But it was interesting. This was the note they ended on. Sting goes, listen, I know that I'm retired, but I hope that one day, because he thought even in that moment when he put the glasses on in the Hall of Fame speech afterward and held up the bat, he thought in that moment, and even all these years later, that the stars would one day align for Vince, Triple H, and Taker to all this for Triple H, Taker, and Vince to all say, yeah, maybe we could do a face-off between Taker and Sting. Sting feels that he could do it. Not a match. I mean, if he was talking about a match, at this point, probably no. You know, I would be a hypocrite if I said, oh, I don't want to see Goldberg and Taker, but Sting and Taker, sure. Like, that ship sailed years ago. Like, I mean, fucking, like, at least 5 or 6 years ago. They should have done it at WrestleMania 31. They didn't. They dropped the ball. That's their fault. And the matches that both guys were in that night, I mean, Sting's match, I didn't think it was great. I enjoyed it for what it was. It wasn't a great match. And Undertaker versus Bray Wyatt was good. It was better than Brock and Taker, but again, that's not saying much. But yeah, the match isn't happening, but he did bring up the possibility of a face-off, which I think is really intriguing because they could do it, and I'm shocked, literally shocked. They have never done a face-off with Taker and Sting. They've had Sting make a few appearances on Raw. I think this year, he actually has not appeared on WWE TV at all. I don't think anyway. I might be wrong. Since he got inducted into the Hall of Fame years ago. But he came back a few times this year, and they never had him, face off with Taker at a WrestleMania, on a Raw reunion, Raw 25, whatever. Nothing. And that, honestly, to me, is very shocking. Because they don't have to wrestle to just confront each other backstage or in the ring, and people would eat that shit up. But that's just me. He closes out the special by saying, I guess I'm just a pro wrestler for life. And wanting, I guess, to come back for that one last match or one last face-off, whatever. But that was what closed this thing out. I thought it was a really strong special. Enjoyed this episode of Untold immensely, so check it out on the network. WWE Untold, Sting's Last Stand, goes into great detail about his Survivor Series 2014 debut 5 years ago today, the WrestleMania match with Triple H. Not as much as the other Untold does, but it's still, they touch upon it briefly, or at least the aftermath. And in a great detail specifically about his Night of Champions match, which ended up being his last against WWE World Heavyweight Champion at that time, Seth Rollins. So great stuff here. I'm a big Sting fan. I met him over WrestleMania weekend this year, and he could not have been nicer. So I really enjoyed this, and as someone who immensely enjoyed that moment of seeing him debut 5 years ago today, I loved watching this back and really appreciating Sting for the icon that he is. But yeah, this was great. Check it out on the WWE Network right now. Once again, WWE Untold, Sting's Last Stand. So if you checked out my SmackDown review, which went up earlier today, I had mentioned that there's a lot of new network content going up this weekend that you can expect me to review in the days to come. So we had the new Untold go up on Friday. Today, we have TakeOver tonight, obviously. And a new Chronicle, I think, is set to premiere after TakeOver, focusing on Cain Velasquez. I think going into his Crown Jewel match, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I don't know what else they would focus on, but, from his debut up until Crown Jewel. So that goes up tonight. Looking to review that tomorrow. Tomorrow is the big premiere of Broken Skull Sessions with Taker and Stone Cold. I'm not watching it that night. It's fucking 2 hours. The pay-per-view won't get over till closer to 11. I may, but very likely not. I'll probably watch it early Monday and have a review up. I'm hoping by late Monday, like by the time Raw comes on. It's like 2 hours. So again, it's going to take a while to watch, review, and then upload. So keep an eye out for that. There's a new day of, I think, going up on the draft, either on Sunday or Monday, reportedly. And maybe one more thing. I forgot what it would be, like a ride-along or a table for three. I don't remember. But bottom line, a lot of new network content going up in the days to come. So again, no better time than right now to subscribe to the channel. Like this video, of course. Drop a comment, share the video, blah, blah, blah. But most importantly, above all else, hit that subscribe button and click that little bell icon to get notified every time a new video is uploaded here to the channel. So until next time, guys, enjoy Survivor Series weekend, TakeOver tonight, and I'll catch your ass down the road.